A critique of seances from the Orthodox Christian perspective. From the standpoint of Orthodox Christianity, seances, ritual attempts to summon, contact, or communicate with the dead, stand in direct conflict with the Church's dogmatic, scriptural, and ascetical understanding of spiritual life. While often presented as benign or even therapeutic, seances involve practices that Orthodox tradition identifies as spiritually deceptive and theologically unsound. 1. Scriptural prohibition and the ontology of death. The Orthodox Church consistently interprets biblical prohibitions against necromancy, mediumship, and divination as universal, moral warnings rooted in the reality of the spiritual world. Passages such as Deuteronomy 18 verses 10 to 12, 1 Chronicles 10 verses 13 to 14, and Isaiah 8 verse 19 are understood not merely as cultural taboos but as revelations of the dangers inherent in seeking knowledge or contact through unauthorized spiritual means. According to the Church, the dead reside in a state known only to God, and the boundary between the earthly and the spiritual realms is not something humans can trespass through ritual manipulation. Communication with the departed, therefore, is not a neutral act, because God does not permit human beings to summon souls at will. Attempts to do so open the practitioner to deception. 2. Patristic witness and the danger of demonic deception. The Fathers of the Church frequently warn against practices resembling seances, identifying them with demonic illusions. St. John Chrysostom, St. Basil the Great, and later ascetical writers such as St. Ignatius Bryankaninov emphasize that demons can disguise themselves as the departed, exploiting human grief or curiosity in order to distort one's perception of the spiritual life. In Orthodox anthropology, discernment is crucial because the spiritual senses are easily manipulated when sought outside the sacramental and ascetical life of the Church. Seances, which rely on invitations to unknown spiritual presences, place participants in a position of vulnerability. The Fathers consistently teach that reliable spiritual knowledge comes through repentance, prayer, and holiness, not ritualized attempts to pierce the veil between the living and the dead. 3. Seances as a distortion of Christian hope. Orthodox Christianity maintains a sober and hopeful eschatology. The departed are entrusted to the mercy of God, and the Church prays for them through established liturgical rites. Seances, by contrast, attempt to create a human-engineered channel to the afterlife, reflecting a desire for control rather than trust in divine providence. This shift undermines the Christian understanding of death as a passage into God's judgment and healing. Seeking immediate and personal communication with deceased individuals replaces the humility of prayer with curiosity, anxiety, or emotional dependence, conditions that ascetical theology identifies as spiritually unwholesome. 4. The communal and liturgical nature of Christian remembrance. Orthodox practice for remembering the departed, memorial services, koleva, commemorations at the divine liturgy, is corporate, prayerful, and directed toward God. These practices are grounded in love, humility, and intercession rather than in attempts to manipulate supernatural forces. Seances privatize and psychologize what the Church understands as a communal, ecclesial act. The desire to hear from the dead personally stands outside the sacramental structure established by Christ, replacing prayer with a ritual form of spiritual experimentation. 5. Anthropological and psychological concerns. Orthodox spiritual writers also warn that practices like seances can damage the practitioner's inner life. They can foster prelest, spiritual delusion, a state in which individuals mistake emotional or imaginative experiences for genuine spiritual reality. Because seances encourage expectation of such experiences, they can create attachment to subjective impressions, illusions, or manipulative spiritual influences. This directly contradicts the Orthodox emphasis on sobriety, humility, and guarding the thoughts, nepsis. Conclusion. From the Orthodox Christian perspective, seances are not merely discouraged but fundamentally incompatible with revealed truth, patristic teaching, and the Church's understanding of spiritual discernment. They invert the proper relationship between humanity and the spiritual realm, opening doors to deception while undermining the Church's liturgical and theological approach to death, remembrance, and the hope of resurrection. Orthodoxy calls the faithful instead to prayer, repentance, and trust in God's mercy, recognizing that true communion with the departed is found not through seances but through the life of the Church, the communion of saints, and the promise of the age to come.